For questions.
Yes, I will.
Gentlemen, yields for questions.
Representative Leach, are you aware that my grandfather was an assistant attorney general for the state of Texas?
No. Congratulations.
Are you aware that he represented Texas in front of the United States Supreme Court 9 times?
No. Are you aware that my dad worked for Oscar Mayer for 25 years and drove the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I am your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. Sometimes a stupid question begets a stupid answer. And that was an equally you're gonna give me stupid questions? I'll give you similarly ridiculousness. What is that? Toothpaste. All right. I know we spent a lot of this week talking about the whole redistricting thing going down in Texas and everything. And frankly, I thought that story was close to running its course. It seems it's not. And if anything, it's branching into a far more national debate, far more where it's looking like it's every bit the domino theory that we heard about communism in the 50s. Because one state starts redistricting, the next thing you know, they're all going capitalist. That's what's happening. Basically. One starts doing, another starts doing it. And frankly, the Democrats are all up in arms saying, this is crazy. We're going to get you back. We're going to talk about that. Also, I found this clip when I was preparing for the show. I found this clip where Harmeet Dillon was explaining and talking about the genesis of this story, which I think most of us who have been covering this story, we're unaware of the genesis of this story. And it's got a little bit of a complicated legal issue, which actually started the whole genesis of this fight in Texas. And in order to ensure that you, my viewing audience, remain the most intelligent viewing audience on the planet, I am going to arm you and equip you by explaining to you and walking you through the implications of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and relatively recent court decisions, which ended up serving as the linchpin for this entire debate and the entire redistricting discussion in the state of Texas, which is something I was unaware of, even though I was covering this story and the whole walkout by the Democrats. I was unaware that this was all. This seemed to be purely political, but it seems as if it's recent legal history, which explains why we're seeing all this come down now. It's not simply that Trump was elected now, so this is why we're seeing it. It's that there's recent case law, relatively recent case law, which has served to spur this on. So I want to break it's a little bit complicated. When I was listening to her, I was confused. I was like, I don't know what the heck she's talking about. So I spent some time doing some research so I can understand the law and then break it down for you in a way that's digestible and hopefully enjoyable. So I definitely want to walk you through that. I also want to walk you through Trump's request for a new census, which ties in very neatly to that entire story, because all this ultimately breaks down is congressional power, specifically power in the House. How many seats are we going to get in the House? Whether you're talking about redistricting in state A or state B, it's about House power. When you're talking about the census, that's about House power. And there's just been a lot going on in that. And I think some of the things that I've been seeing from folks is misleading and probably going to have you thinking things that are inaccurate. So I wanted to make sure you're all on the right page. You all know what you're talking about. So that's where we're going to go. And finally, I plan on covering Jasmine Crockett's chaotic Jasmine Crockett. So definitely want to break that down for you. Yeah, I also want to mention to you that after the show tonight, I plan on doing a locals after party where I am going to be talking about how the Free Palestine claims are 97% crap and 3% exaggerated. So I'm going to break that down for you because I'm tired of sitting mutely on the sidelines. I want to start breaking that out more. So that's a locals after show. The link to that is in the description, which I set that up to start 12:45 because I assume my show is going to be like 2 hours, but that's obviously an estimation based on whatever I end up wrapping up here, whether it's before or after. But I'll wrap up here and then we'll go over there. So I believe you are legal. I believe you're 100% legal. All right. Where are we at? Where are we at? Okay, let's start off. Before we get into this, because I do know some folks are a little bit slow in coming in here. I saw this video, totally unrelated to anything I just discussed. I saw this 2-minute video breaking down the Federal Reserve, and I was like, I need to sort of get it out. I want to get it out. I want to clean the chamber because it's Thursday, right? I don't even know why I'm talking the way I am because it's third person Thursday. So Good Lawgic needs to explain to you that he builds up an arsenal over the course of the week. And it's very important if your firearm is going to be working properly, you got to clean out the chamber regularly. So part of what Good Lawgic tries to do on Third Person Thursday is he tries to get things that have accumulated and never found a place to wedge their way into a show. It's just sort of trying to wedge something in that Good Lawgic found that he thought that might be something you'd enjoy, that you'd be like, that it would enhance your life, and yet never made it in. So there's sort of so Good Lawgic is likely going to be sprinkling stuff like that into the course of this show. Just giving you that heads up. That's what happens on Third Person Thursdays, in addition to, whatever is scheduled for on the schedule du jour. So one of the things Good Lawgic has been looking to drop on you. One of them is this video here about the Federal Reserve, which Good Lawgic thought was really well done and raises some thoughts.
Jekyll Island, November 1910. 7 bankers meeting in secret to create America's central bank. We just can't call it that.
The 1907 panic nearly destroyed us. Banks failed, fortunes vanished.
We want to control America's money supply, create booms, trigger busts, and profit from both. And how will we do that?
We'll create money from nothing, loan it to the government, and charge interest. Legal counterfeiting, my friends.
But there's a cost. Every dollar we print steals value from existing dollars.
I never heard this before.
The hidden tax that flows directly to us.
And it gets worse. If we ever get off the gold standard, governments can print money for wars. Endless wars become possible and profitable.
And it just builds up your deficit. It's just numbers in a ledger.
Since Americans hate central banks, we'll call it the Federal Reserve. Sounds governmental, doesn't it? It's not.
The president will appoint board members, but we'll pick who he appoints. We'll have 12 regional banks. Looks decentralized, democratic even, but New York banks control them all. That's us.
You're probably wondering how we're going to get this through Congress.
December 23rd, 1913. Most of Congress home for Christmas. Perfect timing for passing unpopular legislation.
I'll publicly oppose our own bill in Congress. They'll pass it thinking they beat Wall Street. We'll fund university chairs, write the textbooks. They'll teach our system as economic science. Beautiful. Every American born after this will inherit debt on money we created from nothing. Generational servitude. The Federal Reserve. Not federal, no reserves. But everyone will think it's their government protecting them.
Good afternoon.
that was unsettling. That was unsettling. Hold on 1 second. I gotta get my charger. You had to go there? You had to go there? Did you have to go there? I tried to tell you this Monday night with my super chat about the Louisiana lawsuit in the Voting Rights Act in opposition to the 14th Amendment. Yeah, but I didn't know what you're talking. Back then it was me, not good logic, and yeah, I didn't. Yeah. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying. While many are focused on Texas and New York City, many cops are retiring and quitting as Mamdani becomes mayor. I give New York City 3 months until chaos ensues. You're assuming that chaos has not yet ensued. What we have to sort of define parameters, like what makes something considered chaos compared to the general mayhem that New York is right now. I mean, it's basically the killing zone already. You can't protect people, otherwise you might get charged with a crime. So, yeah. All right. Well, so that was one thing we needed to get out of the chamber, and now that round is spent. There was one other thing that I wanted to get out that really don't know where I would fit this in anywhere. I thought about it. There was a lot of thought that went into where do we get this out. I just wasn't sure where to let it go. So we're gonna have it as just part of our opening stories of note that people should know. And appreciate Beautiful Messy Ball for tagging me on this one, because she did. Breaking: First Lady Melania Trump just successfully got Democrat operative James Carville to retract his false claims connecting Melania to Epstein. Anyone who lies about our beautiful First Lady will be held accountable. One would assume that he made claims that Epstein introduced Melania to Trump, and he got himself a letter, which he got himself a letter from Melania's lawyers, and wisely decided this is not a fight that James Carville wants to get into. James Carville decided this is not a fight that James Carville wants to walk into, which is why he wrote in last week's podcast episode, we spoke with Judd Legum. After the episode, we received a letter from Melania Trump's lawyer. He took issue with our title, which was The Epstein Connection, Trump and Melania. He took issue with our title of one of those YouTube videos from that episode and a couple of comments I made about the First Lady. We took a look at what they complained about, and we took down the video and edited out those comments from the episode. I also take back those statements and apologize. Please do not sue me. Which is the wise move. Look, we have to give, Good Logic is going to give James Carville credit that even if he's maybe sloppy with his journalism, at least he's taking ownership of it before requiring a defamation suit. Not sure exactly what he said in that. To be honest with you, Good Logic is not a regular viewer of James Carville, so it's possible that James Carville said some things that Good Logic never saw, never heard. That's very possible, probable, certainty. So, but just based on the title, Good Logic is assuming that it was a claim that many people seem to be making of late, that Epstein is the one who introduced Melania to Donald, which haven't seen much evidence of that, other than sometimes there are pictures of Epstein with both Donald and Melania. But yes, it is Third Person Thursday. It is. There's a 10% discount for everyone who refers to themselves in the third person on Third Person Thursday. So Your viewing experience here is 10% cheaper if, in fact, you refer to yourself in the third person in honor of Third Person Thursday. You thought there were no benefits. Pfft, right there. Right there. Silly you. Okay, and the last thing, which leads us into this topic as far as like elections and counting people, along the same lines, but not exactly the same thing. There was one other thing I wanted to share with you before we get into our main stories, and that relates over here to a major win for election integrity brought to you by Rod D. Martin. Rod Martin is a popular influencer. He's very good at his mass appeal. He's very proletariat. A U.S. appeals court just unanimously upheld Texas voter ID law for mail-in ballots. This is a win for the good guys. This ruling could set the tone for voter ID laws across America. Here's why it matters. All right, Good Logic's trying to take notes as to like how to like really add little value other than informing people about the story. And then, all right. Not that Good Logic dislikes Rod Martin. He doesn't. Just that the Fifth Circuit ruled 380 that Texas can require voters to provide an ID when applying for and submitting mail-in ballots. That's an important fact. Judge James Ho was blunt. The ID number requirement is obviously designed to confirm that each mail-in ballot voter is precisely who he claims he is. So nice to see that some Hawaiians can actually be intelligent, because frankly, the senator from Hawaii is a very poor representative of her peoples. This isn't about making it harder to vote. It's about making it harder to cheat. Name plus address alone, too easy to exploit. Judge Ho noted that anyone can access that info, request a mail-in ballot, and cast it with minimal risk of detection. This is obvious. This is ABCs. How the hell could anyone can do that? The Election Integrity Protection Act of 2021 requires a driver's license, social security, or other ID number both on the mail-in application and the ballot itself. This is common sense voter security. What would be even better would be to ban mail-in voting. This is true. Jerry Nadler, famous lifelong member of the House from the Democratic Party. He was there since he was a skinny lad until he ballooned up like the penguin. He basically went from being like a baby penguin into being like one of those big giant puffin penguins. And there's clips of him saying that when it comes to mail-in voting, we can give you 9 ways to Tuesday as to how you can cheat in mail-in voting. They scrubbed that in 2020, but Good Logic remembers seeing that in 2019. The lower court tried to strike it down, claiming requiring an ID number is racist, and isn't material to determine eligibility. Of course not. Fifth Circuit wasn't having it. They reversed the ruling, saying the law is fully compliant with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton cheered the win. Giant huzzah. Voter ID is one of the most crucial tools in the battle against election fraud. Trump took it to Truth Social. Great news, should be nationwide. President DJT. Appeals Court upholds Texas law requiring ID numbers to cast mail-in ballots. Democrats fought this law tooth and nail. Remember when Texas Democrats literally fled the state in 2021 to block the vote? That's true. Good memory there. They failed. The law passed. Now it's been validated by the courts. Now, why do they always want to make it easier to cheat? You have to wonder. Texas is big. This case is bigger than Texas. A unanimous decision from a federal appeals court strengthens the legal foundation for voter ID laws nationwide, including for mail-in ballots, the weakest link in election security. The question is how to make this nationwide. That's really the real issue. You can't prove this. This is defamatory, potentially, if it's not true. If this is not true, it's defamatory. I want to just say this. If this is not true, this is defamatory. No one. If it's not, Escape from New York and reality show. There should be. They should have that. Spuds has a plan to constitutionally separate New York into 2 states also along recognized county lines. It's a win-win using West Virginia as a model. Spuds likes this. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad at all. So it'd be like North New York. North New York would be NNY. West New York. What will we call them? Northwest York. What will we call it? There's got to be a name. It's hard to have a 3-word name for a state. That sounds like weak sauce, but the idea is solid. You need to work on a name. We need to get out a name. Let's get into our main stories here. As it's time, it is time for us to get into our main stories. We're going to start with the census because that's where all things. First, we need to count people before we can talk about where they can go. So this is what this morning's news was. This was the talk of the morning news. Donald Trump saying, I have instructed our department. You would think if anyone is going to be recognizing Third Person Thursday, it would be our commander-in-chief. And yet somehow no one got him the memo. I have instructed our Department of Commerce to immediately begin work on a new and highly accurate census based on modern day facts and figures, and importantly, using the results and information gained from the presidential election of 2024. People who are in our country illegally will not be counted in the census. Thank you for your attention to this matter. A lot of people in Camp MAGA, people I like, respect, admire, think highly of, they were very, very excited when they saw this. Tweeting it out like, huzzah, yes. Now, the MAGA portion of Good Lawgic was very, very excited by this because this is important. We shouldn't be counting them in the census. It would discourage all of the reasons that they're trying to bring folks in here. It's have to. If we could actually change, if we could actually make this a thing, if this were a thing, we would do away with the whole illegal alien crisis every time we got some Democrat in office. They'd be on board with the wall. Everything. This is literally everything, because all that motivates them is power. There's no principle behind what they're doing. It's purely power. So if we did this, and the power comes from the fact that if you're in California and you bring in an extra couple of million illegals, you get another seat in the House of Representatives. That's it. That's it. So yeah, the MAGA side of Good Lawgic was very excited by this, but then there was the attorney side of Good Lawgic, because you can't quantify Good Lawgic as one person. No, many sides of Good Lawgic, and the lawyer's side of Good Lawgic was like, I wish we could do that. The lawyer side of Good Lawgic always wants to placate the MAGA side of Good Lawgic. This is a fact, okay? So the lawyer side is excessively sympathetic to the MAGA side, and yet feels it duty bound to, remind the MAGA side of Good Lawgic that, hey, you might want to just, just wait just a minute before you purchase that tux to go to the celebratory ball over this new announcement, because not so sure that this is likely to stand up to much legal scrutiny at all. At all. Like, at all. This one... Not that the lawyer side of Good Lawgic likes this law any more than Good Lawgic likes the idea that, that civil rights apply to illegal aliens. But the census, there's been a lot of case law on this. Let's go further in this. There's a lot of case law which MAGA is not going to be happy about. Specifically about this sentence here: people who are in our country illegally will not be counted in the census. Here's Stephen Miller giving his thoughts on why it is that this is, an important thing.
Chicago, New York.
Let me just make you a little louder. Hey, you make me want to shout.
Massachusetts. Democrats have gerrymandered the vote beyond recognition to try to maintain their advantage in the House elections. On top of that, let's not forget, Democrats rigged the 2020 census by including illegal aliens. Remember, they sued Donald Trump. They sued the administration. They fought tooth and nail to include illegal aliens in the census. 20 to 30 of House Democrat seats wouldn't exist but for illegal aliens. Texas is taking just a small corrective step against this ocean of fraud, this ocean of abuse by the corrupt Democrat Party, Sean. Illinois, Chicago, New York.
Yeah, no. I agree. Good Logic agrees with most of what was said there. The problem is the law is not so favorable. Representative Mary Miller similarly weighing in here with counting illegal aliens in the census robs American citizens of representation and resources. Thank you, President Trump, for putting an end to this insanity. It's simply common sense. You got my vote, Representative Mary Miller, of whatever state you're from. You got Illinois, the 15th district of Illinois. You got my vote. Good Logic agrees with you as to philosophically and principally everything that she writes here is 100% spot on. However, the Constitution has been read that with respect to taking the census says you're supposed to count all persons. All persons. That's the problem we're going to have. I know that's the problem we're going to have because this has come up a lot. And it doesn't really seem to hold up when you try excluding illegal aliens, as Stephen Miller pointed out. That, hey, he wanted to get this done in 2019. Why didn't it happen in 2019? Well, because he lost in court. So why would we win now? Why would it win now? In case you're unaware of what the Constitution talks about with respect to the census, we should pull up a little bit here of statutory stuff so we're all on the same page as to like how the census is supposed to operate. So let me pull that up here. Sorry, I thought I had it here. So it's Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, United States. Which states? Oh, you don't see that, but you should. There we go. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states according to respective numbers. The actual numeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of Congress, every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall by law direct. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. So when it comes to representatives, as in members of the House, and direct taxes are apportioned based on the census, which is supposed to happen within every subsequent term of 10 years. It's been going on for a long time now that we do it every 10 years around when we go from 9 into like the next decade. When you flip over that number, that's usually when the census thing is happening. If you haven't looked at the calendar recently, we're not we're not really that close to a number. In fact, you're almost as far away as you're pretty much as far away as you can be when you're standing here in 2025, 5 years from the last one, 5 years from the next. So it's really not a place where anyone's expecting there to be a census coming. And the objective is to determine the apportionment of seats. Now, with respect to persons, yeah. So representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. So anyone who gets taxed, not Indians, that's how it's written in the Constitution. Sorry, you woke losers who want to say Native Americans. But yes, they are expressly excluded. But whole number of persons is designed specifically to incorporate everyone. Now, this, in case you're unfamiliar with the history, this is what led to the 3/5 compromise. Good Lawgic cannot tell you this often enough, because sometimes there might be new people here who haven't heard me rail about this. When this whole issue was being haggled in the Congressional Congress, when Congress was Constitutional Congress, when they were trying to sort this whole deal out, the North was arguing that slaves should count as 0. The abolitionist Northerners were saying, you in the South call them property. They aren't folks. They aren't people according to you. Hence, they count as 0. South was like, what you talking about? They're a bunch of people. It's our peculiar institution, and they should count as whole people. Obviously, they weren't going to let them vote because they were racists, but there were a lot of restrictions that they put in voting. So they weren't going to let them vote. But as far as counting them for representatives, the South certainly wanted them counted because you had like 13 million slaves. I'm not sure if in 1780 had that many, but there were millions, and there were a considerable portion of the demographic. And hence you had the 3/5 compromise. Now today, 21st century high school kids all saying, they didn't even look at black people as a whole person. Out of sputtering pure ignorance, because it was the abolitionists, the ones who were anti-slavery, who wanted to count them as 0. And it was the most racist people who wanted to count black people as a whole person. So whenever you hear someone saying that, just know that they're talking from utter ignorance, usually loudly from utter ignorance. But the point that I'm getting at here is that there was a special deal that was set up before we had our 13th Amendment and abolished slavery. But whole number of persons, general context, has been taken for quite some time to include even illegal aliens. That's just reality. And there's a whole bunch of case law on it, a whole lot of cases. It's really hard to find anything that's favorable on the case law on this. That's one flaw. That's one flaw with this plan.
Commander, the bejesus out of these.
The other flaw with this plan is, under the Constitution, you can't just say that you're going to do a new census and that's now going to be a basis for reapportionment of seats. That's not how it works. In fact, let's go forward. I know people here mean well. They're people I like. Counting illegal aliens in the census distorts representation or rewards law-breaking states with extra political power. You're preaching to the choir. I agree with you. The law should not be what the law is, but it still is the law. The only way you get around it is if you get the law changed. Theoretically, that could work. Maybe. Probably. I'm hoping. I'd like to think it would. I could still see it facing constitutional challenges, frankly. But That's the only way I have a chance. The Equal Representation Act mandates citizenship verification, ensuring apportionment reflects actual citizens, not foreign nationals. California and New York shouldn't gain House seats by exploiting porous borders. I wish this was true. Trump's order aligns with Section 3 of the bill, which excludes non-citizens from redistricting calculations. And let me pull this up. I didn't see this one before. Let's see what ChatGPT says about this. We're going to go there. What do we say here? It was chapter 3? Is that what it was? You said it was section 3? Here's section 3. Oh, God. Oh, this is just a bill? Okay. Section 22 of the Act entitled an Act to provide for the 15th and subsequent decennial censuses to provide for the apportionment of representatives in Congress approved June 18, 1929 is amended by inserting after not toxified and individuals who are not citizens of the United States. Look, if you get this to pass, God bless. You can get it to pass, great. Good luck getting 60 senators. Good luck getting 60 senators. I'm not sure you'll get 50% of the House. I assume you probably can. You want to put this bill forward. You want to try and get this is the only way to get it done. This is the only way to get it done. So that's fine. I'm fine with this. I'm fine with trying. Good luck. Tell me how you're going to get where you're going to get 7 Democrats. I doubt you'll even get all 53 Republicans. How are you going to get 7 out of those 43 Democrats to go on board? Because this is going to require 60 senators. There's no way you're going to get this on a simple majority. We really need to win an extra 7 senatorial seats in the next election. Not that anyone's foreseeing that happening, but this is a disaster. Because this is not going to work. There's no way this is going to fly. I'm telling you now. You can sit there hoping for it and praying. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But let's hear from Comer on this.
Many important investigations you're on top of today. Let me start with the one that shook Washington a few days ago.
This is not the one.
Subpoenas.
I didn't want that. Shh. Whoops. President Donald Trump on Thursday announced that he had directed the Commerce Department to begin work on a new national census that would not include illegal aliens. I've instructed our Department of Commerce to immediately begin working on a new and highly accurate census based on modern day facts and figures and probably using results and information gained from the presidential election 2024. I don't even understand what this part of the sentence means. There's nothing you can get from the election results which would help you be able to assess what the proper census is. There's no court which is going to be like, well, based on the results of this election, now we know how many people are here. It doesn't even it doesn't flow logically. I don't even know what I don't know what the thought process is, other than I guess from a layperson's perspective, how could it be that the votes come out this way and yet we have this many people in these states? I guess, but that's really not going to be deemed indicative of anything. It can't even be considered indicative because the census is what controls. That's what ultimately prevails. Whatever the findings of the census are, that is locked in stone. You can't, if you do polling afterwards, it's considered inconsequential and not effective on the outcome of the census, almost as if the census is practically like a vote. And other research you do afterwards is like a poll that happens after a vote. It's basically worth bupkis. It's worth what Bupkis, has on his acid sheet. It's an IOU from Bupkis. People who are in our country illegally will not be counted in the census. Trump previously attempted to do so during his first term, though legal challenges blocked that effort. The president has estimated that there could be as many as 21 million illegal aliens in this country. I think there's probably more. So where are we at that this is going to be different? What is different in 2025 than there was in 2018, 2019 when he tried doing this? I guess if you can get that bill passed. The reason I don't, good logic doesn't like to rain on people's parade. I'm just a realist, and if one of you can tell me where I'm wrong, I'd be thrilled. I'd love to be proven wrong on this. Please prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Get that census done without them. God bless you if you can. But even if you do, it's not going to lead to a reapportionment of seats, because that can only happen based on the 10-year thing. You're never going to get, even if you manage to get a census, it would not lead to a reapportionment of seats that, all of a sudden we're going to take out California's 41st district and give it to Texas. That's not happening. That's no way that happens. Even though there's stories like this that Amuse is reporting, the U.S. Census Bureau admitted undercounting population Republican-controlled states like Texas, stealing 2 seats, and overcounting in Democrat-controlled states like Minnesota. Democrats knew that this couldn't be fixed unless Republicans held the House, Senate, and White House as a mid-decade census to be used for the apportionment represented in Congress. Why? Why would that change it? You need to update 13 USC 141E2. Just so happens we have control of all 3 for now. Congress needs to act. We don't hold the Senate by enough of a majority. That's the problem. If we had 60 senators, 100%, everything here, you'd hear me screaming, do it yesterday. The House and Senate should never close for even a second. They should be busy legislating day and night. It should be one legislation after another. That's what I'd be screaming for. But those 7 senators are so critical. So critical. I pulled it up before. I don't know where I put it. Where did I put it? This isn't it. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay. It's not going to happen. That's not what I wanted. Yeah, add pop-ups here. Well, this ties into the redistricting process, because now both parties are revisiting the redistricting process about half a decade earlier than usual, as Trump looks for ways to overcome historical headwinds and maintain the GOP's razor-thin House majority. Last month, at Trump's behest, Texas Republicans began taking steps towards reconfiguring the state's congressional map to potentially squeeze out 5 more seats for the GOP in 2026. Texas Democrats foiled that plan for now. I don't think it's foiled by fleeing the state. Blue state officials, including those in California, New York, and elsewhere, have since threatened to overhaul their congressional maps in response, even though California's constitution specifically outlaws mid-decade redistricting. That's led Republicans to float the possibility of changing the map in red states like Missouri and Indiana, the latter of which was visited by Vice President J.D. Vance on Thursday. The party that holds the White House has lost seats in all but 2 midterm elections since 1938. Since 1938. They always lose seats. Always. Trump is desperately looking to avoid that fate. As Democrat-controlled Congress will dramatically diminish his power and all but guarantee an onslaught of investigations during his final 2 years in office. So I think it's less about the investigations and more a matter of getting things done. So here's DeSantis talking about how he feels like Florida got jobbed in the last census.
Ron, they include anybody that happens to be in your state.
Well, California would lose like 5 seats if they did a fair census. And even beyond that, the Biden census gypped Florida of at least 1 seat. We only got 1 seat in the last census. Are you trying to tell me that Florida only had 1 seat in that? We should have had at least 2. Texas should have had another one. That could be the difference in the House of Representatives and the majority. So I would love for them to redo the census for 26. My legislature will redistrict those lines. We'll get it to where it's fair. But as it's right now, this country is not fairly apportioned. I've got so many more millions of people in Florida that have representation because of that flawed census.
Mr. President, I think it's going to do very well. A lot of people, I don't know if you've heard about it. It's like, it's captivated the country. Everybody wants it. It's going to get in. It's going to pass. And we're going to be Ron. They include.
How is this going to pass in the Senate? How is it going to pass in the Senate? There's no way it's going to. There's no way. There's no way this passes. Tell me how this passes in the Senate. Good Lawgic gets frustrated with this because it's like you're feeding into what Good Lawgic is hoping is true. Remember the MAGA side of Good Lawgic? Hoping, would love to see this, and yet knowing just the crap storm of legal precedent that's standing in the way here. And it's a crap storm. It's a crap storm. Here's more on this. Eric Dougherty reporting huge news. A list of growing Republican states strongly considering redrawing their congressional maps. This is fine. This is fine. Redrawing your to gerrymander, go for it. Texas, go for it. Florida, go for it. Indiana, Missouri, Nebraska. Meanwhile, most of the Democratic states issuing threats on this issue are either severely gerrymandered already or require a special election and or independent commissions to redraw. So this is good news. This is good. If we can get an extra seat out in Nebraska or Missouri or Indiana, Florida by gerrymandering, do it. Do it yesterday. 100%. 110%. You have to work within the rules of the game. Those are the rules. The rules are that they allow for that. I wanted to share with you. Where was it? Talking about that the left is threatening to gerrymander. Here is Maura Healey, governor of Massachusetts, threatening the world. Hey, if you start gerrymandering, if you start gerrymandering in order to get yourself more seats, then we're going to start gerrymandering too.
Many Democratic majority states are now threatening to rewrite their own maps if Texas follows through with its plan.
Donald Trump, Greg Abbott, Ken Paxton have left us no choice.
We have no choice.
That's the reality.
That's the reality.
We came looking for this.
But many Democratic majority states are.
Oh, so now Massachusetts is going to gerrymander? Here's the problem with that, Massachusetts. You have 9 seats, and all 9 are already Democrat. You have already gerrymandered. You already have gerrymandered. You're the problem, Maureen Healy, whatever your stupid name is. Whatever you stupid Mora. Is it Mora? Mora. That's not even a real Mora. This is what they're Mora. Massachusetts has no Republican reps. 9 for 9, all of them. Stupid Democrats. 40% of them voted for Trump, and yet somehow those 40% couldn't cobble together one single Republican. So what are you going to gerrymander? Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! You started this. We're gonna do it right back at you. Shut up! Shut up, you hypocrites! You whiny hypocrite! You left us no choice. You left us no choice. We're just gonna do the same thing. This is what I was talking about the other night. That you can't really threaten to eject the lithium crystals when you've already ejected them. There's nothing left to eject. Nothing left to eject. This is like after you take that whole 24-hour when you go in for that colonoscopy and they make you take all that liquid. You got to finish the whole carton, and then it's like this cleanse type of thing, and then like you're done. And it's like, oh no, you better watch out. There's more. There's not. There's nothing more. There's nothing more coming. Nothing more is. You can't. There's nothing. You can try your best. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. So, yeah. Yeah. I had a clip on that. I had a clip on that. Where is it? This one. I should be closing my clip. I should be closing my tabs as I finish with them, just so I don't get confused, because I am getting confused here. Oh no, Joe's getting confused. Joe got confused. Dang it, where is it? This is going to be really hard to find. All right, let's do it this way. Oh, look at that. I found it.
If Texas redraws.
There we go. Here's a breakdown for you. Donald Trump being asked. It's Thursday, okay? Don't judge. Don't judge. It's Thursday. Donald Trump being asked by Peter Doocy if the potential negative ramifications of gerrymandering.
If Texas redrawing their congressional map would get you 5 safe red seats, means that California, New York, Illinois, and Maryland are all going to redraw their maps to add safe.
Well, they'll do it anyway.
Is it worth it?
Yeah, they'll do it anyway. Why? If we stop over there, they would have done it anyway. Look, a lot of these states, I watched this morning as Democrats are complaining, and they're complaining from states where they've done it, like in Illinois, like in Massachusetts. I watched this lunatic, Pocahontas. She's a total lunatic. I don't know.
The best thing about baby Trump is that when instead of just having 2 faces, you can actually get like the faces of the other people that Trump references. That's what makes it like something that that I can enjoy.
What she's on, she's all jumping up and down like I've never seen anything like it. Talking about supporting the communist mayor, and he's not a socialist. He's a communist. Okay, this is not a socialist, man. This is a communist. If you look at any of his policies and go back 6 months, you don't even have to go back further than that. So they want to put a communist in New York.
He's being asked about redistricting, and the next thing you know, he's talking about Mamdani. He's talking about Mamdani and putting a communist in New York.
Now the good news is we have a lot of power over that because we're the ones with the money. We send the money. We don't send the money. It's up to the White House. A lot of power in the White House. But when I watched her jumping up and down talking about that and supporting the communists. But if you look at what's going on with the redistricting or whatever you want to call it, the Democrats have done it long before we started. They've done it all over the
Pritzker.
place. They did it in New York. They did it.
That's the best. That's supposed to be Baby Pritzker. Holding his stupid map. Look at that gerrymander map. This is a county. This thing right here is a county.
Done it all over the place. They did it in New York. They did it in a lot of different states. But in Massachusetts, so somebody used this as an example today. I was interviewed this morning, and they said, you know, it's pretty unfair. Trump got 40%. I'm not proud of that, but I think I probably got more, but that's okay. I got 40% in Massachusetts, and yet they have 100% of the vote in terms of Congress. So there's no Republican, there's no anything. So we should have 40%. You know why? They redistricted, and they've done it all over the place. And they've done it in California, by the way. Before this, they've done it in California. So we'll see what happens. We have a wonderful governor in Texas. He feels strongly about it. It's going to be up to him. I think there's tremendous support for it.
That was funny. That was
done it in California. So we'll see what happens. We have a
That
wonderful
was really
governor
funny.
in Texas.
Look, he's losing his hair. His hair isn't really quite there. A little comb over there.
Feels strongly about it. It's going to be up to him. I think there's tremendous support for it. And, you know, we've watched the Democrats destroy.
That was supposed to be Biden. With the aviators, the ice cream, and the money. Oh my God.
Destroy our country in 4 years. They've destroyed, between their open borders that we talked about, transgender for everybody, all of the horrible things that they've done, high taxes, horrible medical provision for people. We've watched them destroy our country for 4 years, and people don't want that. And people in Texas, as you saw, I got the highest
Texas.
vote in the history of Texas. I love Texas. Texas, like.
I didn't get this far in before. That was really good.
Just, I love Texas. Texas likes me, obviously, but I got the highest vote, and that was checked out on the show. Did you see that? Where they checked it out, they said he actually did get the highest vote in Texas, which disappointed them. They were very disappointed to hear that. But Texas is a place that's done very well with a free enterprise kind of an attitude, with the exact opposite of what's happening in New York with a communist mayor. And they know what they're doing, and they're doing the right thing. Yeah.
That was really good. Usually, Good Logic's not such a big fan of the whole baby thing, but that one was really good. Anyway, that was really good. And it really was designed to share with you the point that he made. Like, what are they going to redistrict more? What are they going to redistrict? There's no threats. There's nothing left to threaten. And this brings us into a little bit of a legal discussion. I know it's 11:45 at night in Eastern times in the Eastern Seaboard, but it brings us into that discussion, which we need to have about the genesis here, so that you can understand the law. And don't worry, it's actually very complicated law that I'm going to make really simple for you, because I spent a lot of time just sort of dissecting, being like, so how's that work? How's that work? Okay. And what parts are the essential nuggets here that you can actually grab, that anyone should be able to get. So I did like this nickname, New York Jr. That was great. The Schwally, J.H. Schwalbeck, thinks you're amazing, but trying to figure out when your show is going to start is less than that. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I don't know why that is. I know you follow me on, you don't get notifications on locals? Zellian, speaking of locals, where I was checking out, Not locals, in the ghetto. Uzelian says, Joe, 1960, the citizenship question was removed from the short form that went to most households. It was only asked in the long form sample, which only went to a subset of households, about 25%. All right. And Joe Sangai says, Bronca suggests we the people refers too loose to those lawfully here. Who else could the people be? Thoughts? It's a phenomenal legal argument. Hasn't worked yet. Hasn't worked yet. But it's a phenomenal argument. It's not like the concept of what people and persons as it's referenced in the Constitution has come up fairly often, where they have to distinguish ways of distinguishing when it's referring to citizens and not. It's not like this is like a rare thing to come up. It doesn't only come up in that context, because there's frequent references throughout the Constitution to persons and people and things and the distinctions thereof. So, Soldier of Providence is sorry he hasn't been able to donate as much as he used to. His dog got sick again. He's getting old. They both are. Any advice I can pass on? He's not good with change or loss. I was going to make a joke about what advice you were going to pass on to your dog, but that would be bad. Instead, there's not much that I can give you beyond the notion that Good Lawgic is very much a dog person. Very, very much a dog person. So, and yet never had a dog for a myriad of reasons. Mostly because my kids are terrified of dogs. But it sucks. It sucks. What I would tell someone who loses a loved one is, that there's a way of bringing meaning to them by, finding the good attributes in them and like living up to that. It's tougher with a pet, because the pet is much more about the love that we tend to feel for our pets is much more about the sacrifice that we do for them in like good times. It's less about, character traits, although I guess pets could have character traits. Yeah. That's the thing with pets. The only remedy is, people look at pets like they're children, which I don't think they should do that. I think that's a mistake. But that doesn't mean that they don't deserve love, or we don't develop an emotional attachment to them that's very real. Which it is very real. So I'll just tell you that all you can really do is cherish the memories. And frankly, I think most people obviously try to fill that void, finding a similar pet. That's really that's really the best I can offer, which I know is very empty. And I feel as if I whiffed on that, and it's not for lack of trying, just because of I don't happen to have much on that one. So I'm sorry. Not sure the writers expected 20 million illegals. I'm pretty sure you're correct on that. Pretty sure. Don't need the census to change anything other than setup. Why fight to exclude invaders for 2030 and 2030 and probably lose when we can start now? And I agree with Westwoodtown on this 100%. The reason to do this now is to create the groundswell for the future. So that it's not a fight that it's something where we haven't even really been fighting. So while I recognize that this is for today a losing cause, the seeds that get planted today can germinate and sprout and get stronger and stronger and stronger until we actually overturn, hopefully via legislation, so it becomes more permanent, the notion that illegals will count. That's the best way to actually get this thing done. But you have to plant that seed. It has to be something that we recognize is an area we need to be fighting, and Trump is calling public attention to that. So even though I think that this mission is doomed to fail in 2025, it does not mean it's doomed to fail in 2030. So, especially, if JD Vance is able to replace Trump and be running the show in 2030, I think that's having this seed germinate now gives enough time to bake into something that could hopefully be a mighty oak when we need it in 5 years. So Rustown is spot on with this one. The entire Northeast has zero representation. This is largely true in upstate New York. I know that there's a whole bunch of places which are red. But you are correct that there's a gross disproportionate number of Democrat representation. Even on Long Island, sometimes New York, it's really New York City that's plagued by Democrats, and the other states. I don't really feel that New York has gerrymandered to the degree that everyone says that they have. Look at this. I sent a text at the start of the show, and my daughter delivered for me because I really need that. Thank you. So there's that. There's that. But the best baby Teddy Cruz blowing the kiss, that was amazing. Pets are always also fun to cross-examine in Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. But are they? But are they? It's such a great game. Such a great game, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. If you're unfamiliar with Malcolm, I get my monthly reminder as I have for the last 17 months. For the last 17 months, I'm going to give you the horn for the 17 months. He's continually assailing me that I have to play Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. And it has not yet happened. Intrigued though I am. And I actually mean that part sincerely. I'm sure I won't be. I don't have time. I wish there were more hours in the day. I don't have time. Constitution states within every subsequent term 10 years. Last I checked, within does not mean at exactly. Legal argument? It's a fine legal argument. It's a fine one. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work. Just because people will look at history. People will look at history. That you've never done it before doesn't mean within every 10-year period. So is this, you can do the one for that's supposed to count for 5 years from now? I'm not sure who that is. I'm not sure who that is. Resident Loon Tony. I don't know. This is an interesting question. To those of the Jewish faith believe animals can have souls, Christians always debate among themselves if God would bestow a soul into a non-human life. We do not believe that animals have souls. We do not. But good question. It doesn't mean they're incapable of love, but the concept of a soul is that a soul is given to a creature whose objective is to develop into being a superior version of his or herself, which that's not the case. There's no purpose to giving a soul to a dog or a cat or a horse, because they don't have that objective. The objective of giving a soul, is the soul should come to earth, and then here on earth it should better himself. So it's like it's like giving a soul to an animal from a Jewish perspective would just be like giving a fur coat to a bear. Okay, so I really wanted to get into the whole redistricting thing. I'm going to watch a video together. So when I saw this video, I was like, this is what I clicked on. Just the news. And I saw a 6-minute video, and I was watching it, and I was like, I need to learn more about what Harmeet is talking about here. A census without illegal aliens count expected to simply alter the congressional landscape. And then there was this, and Harmeet was there. This is Harmeet in the corner over here. And we covered this story. But this video here, which is really more about the redistricting fight in Texas, is a very, very interesting video, which really explains the genesis as to why this redistricting fight happened. And I want you to all understand this. So let's go.
But the big brouhaha in Texas at the State House, where the Democrats have basically absconded and won't do their job, actually is triggered by a letter you sent Texas telling them that some of their districts were illegal. Tell us about that.
Telling them that their districts were illegal. Now, when it comes to this area of law, this is an area of law that most people, layperson and attorney alike, know very little about. Because when it comes to lay people, why would anyone understand this very confusing law? And if you're not an attorney who's handling this area of law, which, let's face it, is fewer than 2% of all attorneys, it's still very confusing how the Voting Rights Act works. So we're going to hear from Harmeet Dillon, and I'm going to explain to you afterwards. You're likely to be confused by what she's saying, and I'm going to explain to you afterwards what she is saying. And know this, the only reason I know is because I actually did the research here.
Well, yes. So I mentioned that the courts are beginning to percolate these decisions that are striking down portions of the precedents that have, some would say required, but certainly enabled race-based districting.
Race-based districting, meaning districting that we're going to draw districts, congressional districts, based on the race of the people in that district.
And so one of the flavors of race-based districting that states have tried to do over the years, and tried to do because they've been forced to do by plaintiffs, minority groups, plaintiffs, is that you can combine multiple minority groups or count on a certain white crossover group to a minority group to make what's called a coalition minority district under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And in the
Okay. Already, I would assume that most of you who haven't looked into this are confused by what the heck she's talking about, because baked into what she's saying, you need to understand something about the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So part of the progressive reforms under Johnson, when he was the Democrat trying to convince the black community to vote for him and vote Democrat forever, because we're going to give you like a couple of candies and now you're going to vote Democrat for the next 100 years. So one of them was the Voting Rights Act of 1965. If you look in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, what it spells out is you cannot purposefully gerrymander to strip away a minority community of their ability to elect leadership. So how this is manifested since 1965 is that what does that mean? What was the concern that this bill was designed to, that section of the bill was designed to address? Well, if you think about it like this, let's assume that you have a city which is 40% black. And black people tend to vote a certain way, whether it's Republican, Democrat, whatever, because understand that in 1965, most of them were voting Republican. So what you might want to do is say, oh, okay, so if we take that they're concentrated in a particular area, because people tend to live in racial zones, just tend to work out for both white, black, Latino, Asian, Jewish. Everyone's got their own racial zones where people tend to congregate. So if we expect that they're going to vote a certain way, we could gerrymander to strip them of having any leadership. Where if you take, like, let's say we know that there's an area of 30 square miles where there's a concentration of our black community. Well, you can take that and then gerrymander it and split it into 3 different ways so that they get swallowed up by white folk. And then no matter how hard and aggressively they come out and vote for their candidate, they're not going to end up getting any candidates because they're going to be outvoted by the white folk who are, presumably voting against them. I mean, that was in 1965. That was likely a legitimate concern. So in order to stop that from happening, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 said that if there is a majority of minority folk in a certain area, where you could even have that they might be 60% of a city, but just strip them into different parts so that they basically end up getting no leadership at all. So what it said is, if you have an area which is a majority minority, meaning a majority of the people in an area, the majority of them are of a minority demographic, black, Asian, Latino, Jewish, doesn't matter, that if you have majority of people in a jurisdiction are like that, they have to get their own district that they can elect representation in the House. You can't gerrymander that away from them. That's what the act says. But how has that played out since 1965, over the last 60 years? Well, sometimes you don't have a majority or a particular minority. You might have a city which is, let's say, 35% black, 35% Latino, and 30% white. So can you gerrymander that away? Because none of them are a majority, or none of them, fit that designation as being a majority, because there's no minority in this area, which is a majority of the people in this overall jurisdiction. So would they be entitled to demand, you have to give us a district gerrymandered that we can now vote for representation, or not? That was the issue of law. And they came up with this idea of a coalition of different minorities that together could form a majority. So what they said is, we're going to take the black people living here, and assuming they vote in a similar way to the Latino community, now we're going to put them all into one big giant saucepan here and try and create a jurisdiction and say, you must create a district for them to be able to elect a leader. So the irony of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is that it actually is either inviting or enabling reverse racism, because we're basically saying the minority folk have to have someone. There's nothing for white people, but there's something specifically for them. That's how it's been interpreted. And not only was it interpreted just for if you actually have a majority being a minority, but even if you got a whole bunch of different minorities, that you can cobble them together for the purposes of getting them leadership and start treating them as if they're all the same minority, calling them a coalition of minorities. So it's a majority of people, so like a majority minority. That's the phrase. So it's the majority of people who are of a minority race. It gets confusing because the words majority minority seem to be in contradiction with each other. But it's majority of the people in an area who are of minority race. So now we're going to create a majority of people by taking from minority A, B, and C, and say, boom, now we have together they equal a majority of the area. So now they have to have representation.
Fifth Circuit, which Texas is a part of, there was a recent decision in 2023 that struck down this concept of coalition districts, but left alive what is now going to be considered by the Supreme Court a sort of majority minority district. But you have to have a single minority that composes a majority of that district. I know that's a lot, but this is a very convoluted area of the law.
So now I think you all understand what she was just saying. So they struck down this whole coalition concept in the Fifth Circuit. There's a Fifth Circuit case, which is actually, we'll come back to that in a moment, the Pettaway case, which is Pettaway versus Galveston. The plaintiffs in Pettaway v. Galveston. So basically the law that was on the books creating this concept of a coalition of minorities that were going to put together different minorities in order to create a majority of minorities. The issue in the heart of Pettaway was whether Campos v. City of Babytown should be reversed. In Campos, the court allowed a coalition of Black and Hispanic voters to challenge a redistricting plan under Section 2, even though neither group could individually create a majority-minority district on their own. Neither one of them had enough people to be in the majority. Under Campos, courts could aggregate distinct minority populations when assessing whether a voting district had been drawn in a way that diluted the voting power of coalition minority groups. Over the years, Campos has been cited in several cases where minority coalition argued that they were entitled to a combined coalition district. In Pettaway, the Fifth Circuit took a fresh look at this precedent and concluded that Campos did not align with the explicit and unambiguous text of Section 2 or the Supreme Court's interpretation of the VR, the Voting Rights Act. The plaintiffs in Pettaway v. Galveston challenged a 2021 redistricting plan. Now, Pettaway was decided in 2024. And they were looking at a 2021 redistricting plan adopted by Galveston County, Texas, arguing that it diluted the votes of Black and Hispanic voters by dismantling the county's only majority-minority district, Precinct 3. After receiving the 2020 census data, the Galveston County Commissioners Court adopted a new map that eliminated Precinct 3 in favor of a new plan with no majority-minority districts. They said, we don't care about your stupid coalition. You're not a majority here. You're not entitled to the special privilege of having your own district. And a unified coastal district instead. Galveston has a history that implicates coastal issues in a way not many other jurisdictions do. The original district had combined population of Black and Hispanic voters that comprised 58% of the precinct's citizen voting age population. Despite having a significant presence, the Black and Hispanic populations were geographically concentrated in different parts of the county. And the plaintiffs argued that the new plan diluted their voting power by splitting up those populations. So what the Democrats were basically screaming is, hey, we want the Black and Hispanic folk to be able to vote together, and you put them into two different districts, and now they're minorities in each, and they don't have any voting power. The district court sided with the plaintiffs' ruling that the redistricting plan violated Section 2 because it diluted the voting power of Black and Hispanic coalition, and they relied on Campos, which is what the district court is supposed to do. District court is not supposed to be writing new law. They're supposed to be following what precedent said, and precedent under Campos said you need to combine them and put them together to enable them to now be recognized as a majority of the people in the area. But then the en banc Fifth Circuit reversed the district court's decision and overruled Campos. So Campos is not good law in the Fifth Circuit anymore and established a new basis for evaluating Section 2 claims. The court held that coalition claims are not permitted under Section 2. You can no longer say, well, they're black people and they're Hispanic people, and they kind of vote the same anyway. So now if we look at them together in the aggregate in this county, we can see that they're entitled to have the map drawn in a way that they're definitely going to get some Democrat elected, essentially. And that instead, each minority group must independently meet the Gingell's preconditions in order to bring a valid claim. The Fifth Circuit's opinion was grounded in a close reading of the statutory language of Section 2, the legislative history and Supreme Court precedent interpreting the VRA, particularly Bartlett v. Strickland. Fifth Circuit ultimately concluded that coalition claims as allowed under Campos did not align with the statutory text of legislative history and were inconsistent with Supreme Court. So what they're basically saying, the Fifth Circuit is basically saying this whole concept of taking different minorities, stacking them together, and then saying, well, now if we look at all these different minorities as one big lump sum, we can now say that they all vote similarly, and accordingly, they have to have their own special districts so that they can win elections. That's crap. That's what they basically said. In its textual analysis, Fifth Circuit focused on the critical distinction between the use of the singular form of class versus the plural form. Section 2 consistently refers to a class in the singular, indicating the claim must be based on a single protected group, meaning blacks or Hispanics or Asians, because each a different class of people who would be bringing a claim. Defined by shared characteristics like race, color, or language minority status. The statute's language and legal precedents emphasize that a class refers to a group with a common defining characteristic and is not intended to encompass multiple distinct groups. It's a very wise decision by the Fifth Circuit. What that means is that you're not supposed to have a special district now for them anymore, which means you should be redrawing your district maps. Now, this decision came out in 2024. So we need to be implementing new maps in Texas based on this new finding of the Fifth Circuit. And anywhere that you're seeing that there's a special jurisdiction that's set up there, purposefully designed to comply with the 1960 Voting Rights Act, with this under the theory of this coalition of a majority-minority, a coalition majority of minority people, that's bad. That's bad. That's not supposed to exist. That's not supposed to be there anymore. That's the point that Harmeet Dillon was making. Because of this decision, you need to redraw all these maps because you're basically playing favorites when you're not supposed to be. So redraw your maps so that it's not screwed up the way it is. And she explains why in good explanation as she goes further.
So we took a look at Texas, and we found that 4 of their districts in Texas are comprised of these so-called coalition districts. In other words, to get to a special minority district, you have to add together multiple minorities or count on a certain percentage of a crossover white vote. And this is too complex, too weird, and too inconsistent with equal protection.
The crossover white vote would be whites voting Democrats. So it's like we have to get a certain number of Democrats into the House, which is insanity. It's insanity because, well, black people vote Democrat, because Hispanic people vote Democrat. That's insanity.
And so we wrote to Texas telling them that even though that law had been struck down a couple of years ago, their districts are now not in compliance with the federal voting rights laws. And so they needed to take action to fix them. That is what triggered the Texas legislature and the Texas governor to call the legislature into session to put new maps together. And that is what caused.
So Harmeet is the one who started this whole thing because she saw what was happening here. She sends a letter to Abbott saying, you need to redraw your lines. Now, because based on this ruling that came out in 2024, your lines are all screwed up. So she sent a letter, and so Abbott responded by calling a special session of the Texas legislature in order to approve the newly drawn maps in order to comport with the law as the law changed in 2024. This is why it's coming up in now. This wasn't the law in 2021, 2022, 2023. So that's why it's coming up in the middle of a decade. The left is like, this is not supposed to happen in the middle of a decade. It doesn't have to happen in the middle of a decade. There's no requirement, but there's nothing stopping it from happening. So the reason someone asked me earlier, the question, and I sort of shrugged it off. One of the super chats that I got here earlier was asking me the question, saying, just because it says that it's every 10 years, that doesn't mean that it has to be. Who was that? Someone, and I thought it was a fair question. Maybe it was in I think it was in the ghetto. Someone asked me that. Let me get it. Yeah, Santiago Space Outlaw. It's a fair question that I kind of shrugged off without giving it. Where he said, Constitution says within every subsequent term of 10 years. Last I checked, within does not mean that exactly. Legal argument. And I shrugged it off because when it comes to the census, which is a whole constitutional thing, to start changing that precedent and start saying, well, now we're going to do it 5 years early. So what does that mean? So can you do it 2 years later again? Could it happen every year by that logic? That's, where does it end, man? Where, good God, Sally, where does it end? Where does it end? That's what the other side's going to say. So you're going to do it now, and we'll do it again if we get a new president in 3 years, we'll do it again. So, and I think that ultimately it will not prevail because they'll just look at the history as to how it's been implemented and being like, yeah, you got to be close to the end of a decade, not smack dab in the middle of it. If you wanted to count, meaning if you wanted to actually be functional as far as implementing a change in the configuration of how many legislators each house, the electoral count for each state, you want to start taking people away, start taking votes or seats away from various states. You can't do that in the middle of a decade. That's what they will almost certainly say. Very, very different from gerrymandering in the middle, particularly because you have this case that came out, which now changes the whole law as to how each state is supposed to be, the boundaries within each state is supposed to be drawn up. It's not reapportioning and taking from state A and moving votes over state B. It's just saying, okay, state A has this many votes, but when we're figuring out their districts, how we're going to draw those maps within this state, it's not affecting any other states. It's unlikely. And there's a reason that they're doing it now, given the change in the law as decided by the Fifth Circuit. This, I think, has no problem at all passing. This should almost certainly pass any sort of judicial scrutiny. Jade Schwalbeck says, Schwally believes you do a clean census now and another one in 5 years so you can point out the dishonesty and the corruption. Hopefully this will get the ball rolling or make my balls itchy, not which is better. And look, in theory, he can do a census. In theory, he can do a census. It just won't have any. If he could do a census, it will not have any impact on affecting seats now. So in that sense, Schwally is making a good point, and good logic can agree with Schwally, that it does make sense to do a census now, if only so this way, when there's a really effed up census, in case we lose in 2028, and there's a Democrat sitting in the White House and conducting a census then, and the numbers look bizarrely misaligned from the 2025 census, that gives us more of a justification to shriek as to just how twisted and contorted they are. So in that sense, it could be beneficial. I gotta agree with you on that. Gotta love Harmeet. She's doing great work. She is. Charles, these Democrats that are denying quorum are obstructing the creation of a map. That's a government process papers. So should that count as a crime? That is government process papers. So should that count as a crime? USB Fisher says that's not obstruction. That's not obstruction. I actually covered this the other day. Before USB Fisher, you could say, okay, you're disrupting, you're obstructing. But USB Fisher made clear that That's not how 18 U.S.C. 1512C is supposed to be interpreted. Obstruction is referring to destroying evidence. So, was once upon a time a good question, but the Supreme Court has put that to rest, thankfully. Kimmy Guy is off to bed. I have to be at the hospital at 6 a.m. The final treatment. Please pray for me. Your prayers are precious and coveted by me. Amen. God, please help Kimmy get through this and be strong like a warrior as she kicks cancer's ass. And if you want to support Kimmy, link is... If you want to... Link is not in the description yet, but I'm going to try and throw it out there. We'll try to do that. I'll put it here while I'm doing my links. All right. I will remind you, in case you haven't noticed in the pin to the chat there, that after the show, I will be doing a locals after show. The locals after show will be about the Free Palestine folk and how 97% and debunking the arguments of the Free Palestine people, where I think I titled it 97% crap, 3% massive exaggeration. So
caused all these Democrats to spitefully flee the jurisdiction to avoid there being a quorum. And so I think this is very interesting. You can see that from the extreme reaction of certain people that they are very concerned. And you've seen members of Congress come out, and you've seen Governor Gavin Newsom from my former state of California come out and troll governors of other states over this, that this is an existential threat to the seats that have been gerrymandered for minority congressional candidates who get in there and then keep them for years. And some of these districts stretch 200 miles and they go around multiple counties and they cross bodies of water and they violate concepts in the voting rights laws that have to do with compactness of districts, contiguity of districts, and respect for political subdivisions. For example, the types of lines that are drawn for state legislative districts. These congressional monster districts that look like snakes, and they're really quite ridiculous. And so the Supreme Court is actually going to be taking up this issue in one step further than the analysis I did for that letter. And so really a lot is at stake here in this voting rights area.
It's huge.
I was at the White House about an hour ago, and President Trump was asked about this very issue. And the question was posed to him, is it worth it for Republicans to win out on this argument in Texas and Republicans get 5 more electoral votes and seats in Congress? Or, you have these other states, like you said, California, Massachusetts, Illinois, champing at the bit to gerrymander even more. So how do you reconcile that?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I don't know how it's going to shake out, and that's actually not my job in the Civil Rights Division. My job in the Civil Rights Division is nonpartisan. It is to understand and enforce the federal voting rights laws. And so,
very shrewd move on her part. She could have just said what Trump said, and said, "Well, he's right," but instead she leans into the "I'm nonpartisan. I'm nonpartisan." I like that. She is a smart cookie.
Justice Thomas's dissent from the recent punting of a particular case that is now the center of attention here, Louisiana versus Calais, really very sharply calls into focus the fact that the court's interpretation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which enables and some would say requires racial gerrymandering all over the United States, not just in Texas, in every state, just about, except for those.
It requires reverse racism, basically.
States that only have one district, is directly at odds with the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. So it's interesting that in trying to remedy the vestiges, the recent vestiges of slavery in our country, which brought us the Equal Protection Clause, we've had these later laws that are relying on extremely outdated concepts of now completely banned for decades tests like poll taxes and literacy tests to become registered to vote. These don't exist anymore in America, and yet we're still drawing districts to remedy discrimination that hasn't existed for decades. And so California may blithely be trolling other states over their lines, but the fact is that California is rife with majority minority districts that have been drawn. They're pet little districts for some of the longest running members of Congress. And all of these things are threatened. By the way, whenever you get rid of these types of districts, you're also, of course, affecting the districts around them. And I was talking to a friend about this when Louisiana first passed this type of a district. They were accused of an unholy alliance between Republicans who wanted, safe districts for themselves, and the sort of civil rights lawyers who wanted safe minority districts. Some would say both have safe districts in that situation, but it's 2025 in America today, and people can get elected on their merit. Nobody is banning people or hindering people because of their race from reaching the polls or from competing for office. And so I think that's really the current concept is, and I think the Supreme Court's going to decide that this term, hopefully, whether Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act any longer permits or certainly requires racial gerrymandering. And so Texas is just one example. I can tell you several states have similar problems with their districts. And so we're going to see a lot of this shake out over the coming months.
So there you go. Yikes. Yikes.
All right, I want to ask you.
All right. So the bottom line is now you're all hopefully far better informed as to how this whole special majority district law works. And frankly, there shouldn't be anything like that. Harmeet Dillon is spot on in everything she just said there. Every word she said is spot on accurate. It is reverse racism. Perhaps in 1965, this was legislation that was necessary because there were so many, Jim Crow type of laws that were designed to ways that various states were notoriously trying to abuse minorities by, and harming them. But fortunately, that's not been the case for a long time. And the upshot of this is Nancy Pelosi is famous for saying there's some districts where, a glass of water could win an election as long as it's Democrat. And that's the special majority districts where they basically say, okay, we're going to now consider you, we're going to parcel together this district in a way that's almost mandating that a Democrat gets elected. And it would be a nice relief to see that change and change drastically, where we basically say that's no more. And it starts with saying that you can't make a coalition to make a special majority. But frankly, the entire element of it that apparently in a dissent, Justice Thomas, unsurprisingly, was rather astute in saying this is racism against white people. And basically saying, oh, we're going to try and find some way that we can put together various, minorities and who are living within a couple hundred miles of each other in order to establish that they're now a majority in this region. It's insanity. Let them win elections like the old-fashioned way, like actually being a good candidate. Ticket number 44, the Cumanian Sybil. I hope I'm going to see you later when I have very soon when I'm going to be starting my, it's supposed to be like in 15 minutes, I'm going to be starting my locals after party. The link is in the description and also pinned in the chat. And I hope to see all of you over there as I'm breaking down the Free Palestine insanity. Sorry, I left the East Tunnels under Digger 13 and 21's careful last few months. Had to graduate law school and study for that bar thing. Mission now accomplished. Did you take my advice? Did you take my advice? Oh, I hope you learned that you passed. I don't know how long it takes these days. I don't. Oh, good. Look at that. I'll be there. Beautiful. Looking forward to it. Okay. Finally, I want to talk to you about Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett. Let's talk about Jasmine, baby. That wasn't what I meant to be singing. All right. Justin, Michael Malice saying Superman is a movie about how immigrants contribute to society. But reality is former Superman actor Dean Cain reveals he's become an ICE agent to support Trump's mass deportation agenda. The actor was sworn in ASAP amid the federal agency's recruitment drive and unprecedented immigration raids that have sparked protests across the U.S. Superman. Oh, man. I hope he comes out in a Superman outfit. That'd be awesome. I hope he has an old Superman outfit and he come out there and returning you afuera. Big giant A for afuera. That's awesome. I had to share that with you because I think that's hilarious. I was on a podcast with George the Giant Slayer and I met Dean Cain there. And I'm not going to kid you, I was kind of tickled. There are very few celebrities who I actually have any sort of aspiration of ever interacting with on any level whatsoever. But a guy as based as Dean Cain, I was like, wow, this is a privilege. And I told him that he was the best Superman. I said, I'm probably just fluffing a little bit because frankly, Christopher Reeves was pretty epic. But yeah. Sorry, I was just reading the chat here. Oh my God. Wow. 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 I'm sorry, I should share with you all what I'm wowing about. I'm wowing at this troll. Oh my God. This dude here. The feast of unleavened bread mixed with human blood, and the others to forgive them for all the blood they've shed. Wow. Dude. Look at this dude. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Idiot. Doofus. The Jews used to kill children, take their blood and mix it with the blood of the holiday. Mix it with the blood of the holiday. There's no blood of the holiday. Oh my God. Idiot. So much stupid. Yeah, there's so many levels of stupid in this. Okay. Do I actually have to explain how many levels of stupid there are in this centuries old blood libel? This was like the stupidest thing. Do you know that what makes it to like or to actual Orthodox Jews who hear that, they're just like, how the hell could something like that even take the notion that something like that, if any claim that you're going to make about Jews, which I know there's a lot of claims people make about Jews, any claim you can make about Jews that can take root, you can sort of see where the genesis would start, right? In other words, you want to talk about, let's say, the trope about Jews and money. I can see how that would unfold. You know, Jews successful in business, the Rothschilds. You can definitely see. I can see where racist tropes like that would start and then grow into, mythic proportions. You can understand that. This level of stupid, though, from this guy, this level of stupid, I never even understood it, because we actually are so expressly prohibited from ingesting any form of blood. We won't, if there's a blood spot in the yolk of a chicken. It makes like our dishes not kosher. That's how much we're like, because we're not allowed to drink blood, any blood, even animal blood, much less human blood. But we're not even allowed. That's why I was like, that to me shows like the miracle of like anti-Semitism. That's something that is completely the opposite of what we have ever been allowed to do in any way, shape, or form, even with respect to animal blood. That could actually have been accepted by like large numbers of people, that, oh, Jews drink human blood or Christian blood or whatever it is that they would say. There's just, to me, that was actually proof of God. That God's like, hey, I can make the world believe anything. Believe anything. There are some people out there who are such deep levels of stupid that they will swallow anything. And some of them are named Muhammad and apparently Muhammad Z6K2C. Thanks for playing. What's the opposite of Christopher Walken? Christopher Reeves. He's dead, brother. He's dead. He's dead. Oh my God. That was really, really harsh. That's a very, very, very harsh joke. That's a very, very harsh joke. Very, very harsh joke. If you need a code, which, you know, I'm happy to give out codes to anyone. If you need a code, hit me up and I'll swing out some codes before, like at the beginning of my show. Okay. I'll swing out some codes to everyone. I'll make sure that no one who asks for a code will be denied. Okay. You just need to ask. Even if you're a Muhammad, Z627C43 bleep bloop bloop. All right, let's talk about Jasmine. Just in, multiple staffers have turned against Jasmine Crockett, accusing her of being a no-show boss from hell, as per the New York Post. She is never, quotes, she's never in the office and is very disengaged. She does her BS that goes viral and then freaks out over the most random things, a former aide said. She's laying around her apartment, won't come into the office, and is really just indifferent to staff and will scream at them, another aide said. A third aide added, she's focused almost exclusively on being an influencer, not a member of Congress. Crockett also demands to be driven around the back seat of an Escalade anytime she's in Washington, requiring a staffer to wait hours next to the car, just be ready to open the door for her. Texas needs to get rid of this chick. Here she is doing her Jasminiest things.
We're not going to do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just
you just voted to do it. Y'all did it first, so you just voted to do it. Order.
I'm trying to get clarification.
Look at calm down.
No, because this is what y'all do. So I'm trying to get clarification.
You're not recognized, Miss Crockett.
I can't hear you with your yelling.
Don't want
calm down.
No,
please calm
don't
down.
tell me to calm down.
Calm down.
Because y'all talk noise, and then
you're out of control.
Because if I
Chairman,
talk shit about her, y'all gonna have a problem.
We're not going to do.
There you go. There you go. Such an upstanding congresswoman. There you go. Democrat mutiny. 3 of Jasmine Crockett's staffers have turned against her, alleging Crockett is an abusive boss who routinely berates and belittles them, curses them out, refuses to go to office, choosing instead to go to a lounge to lounge around her luxury DC apartment while they complete all her tasks, has them do her laundry, and treats them like an Uber service. I'm going to pull the New York Post article. She's really freaked out that she's going to get redistricted out of her seats, because the only way this woman wins is by having her special district, her special majority district. Oh no, you didn't. I don't know if we're going to be much more in the New York Post article. I haven't read it yet, but let's see what we got. Trump critic, yeah, quit it. Trump critic Representative Jasmine Crockett is a no-show boss from hell who terrorizes staffers. Aides say, all diva, no wow. Representative Jasmine Crockett has positioned herself as an unfiltered critic of President Trump, earning regular TV appearances and an enthusiastic online following. But congressional aides tell the Post that Dallas Democrat is just as rude and mean to her own staff. It's not that she's anti-Trump. It's just that she's a crazy biatch. The liberal loudmouth has rocketed to fame since taking office in January 2023 as a fiery antagonist of the Republican president and his allies. But three sources who have worked with or for Crockett said she's rarely present when TV cameras aren't rolling and terrorizes staff when she does appear. Crockett is now often found at her government-provided suite in the Longworth House office building, with one insider saying she prefers to work from her nearby luxury apartment building, sometimes for weeks on end. She's laying around her apartment, won't come to the office, and she's really just indifferent to staff and will scream at them, the former aide said. She's never in the office, very disengaged. She does her BS that goes viral and then freaks out over the most random things. A second source close to Crockett's team said it is widely known that she's not nice to staff and is just not a really dedicated member focused on constituents. She's focused almost exclusively on being an influencer, not a member of Congress, said a third source who has worked with Crockett, describing her as all diva, no wow. When Crockett does show up for work on Capitol Hill, often to attend a committee hearing where she deploys a made-for-social media attack on Trump, she prefers to have a staff member drive her the short distance to her office in a rented car rather than the staffer's own, a cheaper option commonly used by lawmakers because she's just a freaking diva. The staffer is expected to stand outside the vehicle, which has to be an Escalade or a similar upscale make, and open the door for her. You're technically allowed to do this, but it's wildly inefficient. Instead of using the scheduler's car, she rents a car every week in D.C., one source said. She expects her staff to drive her around while she's in the back seat, like she's a freaking queen. They added calling it a power play akin to treating the staffer like an Uber driver. Ugh. While Crockett tried to fundraise off the Real Housewives-style viral clash, the Congresswoman's staff, which includes multiple gay and lesbian members, were left with mixed feelings. Complaints poured in from lesbians who objected to Crockett's derogatory use of the term butch to attack Green, which even left some aides uneasy. She told her staff members, "That's not offensive. You're stupid if you think so." A former aide recounts to the Post, "It was kind of like how Trump says the gays love me." 3 months later, Crockett was given a coveted speaking slot at the Democratic National Convention, where she ripped the former and future president as a vindictive, vile villain. Crockett has burned through employees at such a pace that she's becoming known as a present-day version of the late Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, long called the Capitol's toughest boss. A number of staff have become fed up with her treatment, while others have either been fired or left on their own, a distinction often difficult to discern in Washington. Some former aides cited fear of retribution when declined to participate in this story. She thinks she's her own best advisor. She knows best, has the toxic staff environment, a source said. She gets rid of press people because she's like, I do all the press stuff. On one occasion, described to the Post, Crockett reduced a legislative aide to tears, bellowing, "Do you really want to be here? And if not, you can leave." Another aide, a young black woman, was fired abruptly and confided to a colleague, "I don't want to hear Jasmine Crockett talk about helping black women when she just fired one for no reason." There you go. There you go. Capitol Hill jobs often are filled based on personal connections, and openings are circulated among group friends. A source told the Post that a job listing for Crockett's team recently was shared among a large group of black Democratic women, but nobody expressed interest in the gig. No one wants to work for that crazy woman. You would think working for a black woman, if you were a young black woman or a young person of color, you'd feel empowered in that space, said a former Democratic congressional aide. But truly, the only person that she thinks about and cares about is herself. This should not be surprising to anyone. Because when someone comes from nothing and rises up into becoming something, they often become the worst of tyrants. She's a wannabe tyrant. She thinks she's a queen because she won a stupid election in a district that she couldn't lose. The staff is really just an island unto itself because she doesn't care about the local issues happening in her district, the person added. She's more focused on get me on The View, get me on the late night talk show. A lot of congressional hearings are on the most boring, basic crap. So how is it at every hearing it's about Trump? It's about Trump again and again and again. And it's like she's not actually doing any real work. She's at a hearing. We can be talking about the budget. They could be talking about appropriations. And she brings it back to Trump every time, the source griped. She causes some kind of tension and issue. The hearing has to stop. The chairman has to bang this gavel. It's like a spectacle and show. Not everything has to be clipped for MSNBC. That's what she is. That's all she is. She's basically Jerry Springer. She's like a Jerry Springer guest in Congress. Crockett has also cycled through several chiefs of staff, with one observer saying it's because they want her to do her actual job, and the actual job of a member of Congress isn't fun and glamorous. So unless you're somebody willing to say yes to all the outrageous things she'd like to do, you're not going to last long. Crockett hasn't been coy about her treatment of staff, recently offering 2 examples of rough treatment of subordinates in an interview with Atlantic magazine journalist Elaine Godfrey. Behind the scenes, the representative speaks casually, Godfrey reported. She can also be brusque. During our interview of the Waldorf, she dialed up a staffer in D.C. in front of me and scolded him for an unclear note on her schedule. Another time in the car, after an aide brought Crockett a paper bag full of food from a fundraiser, she peered inside, scrunched her nose, and said, "This looks like crap." The Texas Congresswoman, despite granting Godfrey's access for the profile, attempted to retract her interview remarks when the journalist didn't ask her permission to request comment from other members of Congress, most of whom reportedly would not volunteer flattering words. The lawmaker claims she was shutting down the profile and revoking all permissions. It wasn't Crockett's first self-induced PR problem. In May, she allegedly boarded a commercial flight ahead of 2 handicapped people. Such a self-entitled bitch. Such a self-entitled bitch. According to Representative Lisa McLean, who posted photos of the incident. Let me see if I can find photos of that. Jasmine Crockett with taxpayer-funded police escort, cutting everyone in line, even making disabled people wait. Self-entitled bitch. Yeah. Her cutting in line in front of handicapped people is really indicative of the type of person she is, said a source who has worked with Crockett. She's interpersonally very rude and doesn't get along well with people, which is telling you that she doesn't believe any of the crap she's saying. And this is the Post now received a reply after sending multiple detailed emails requesting comments. Of course not. What the hell is she going to say? What's she going to say? Obviously, people hate me. I'm a bitch. So, yeah, when this is someone who obviously, when you're electing someone who's there for the power, you shouldn't be remotely surprised when all they care about is the trappings of power, right? I mean, she doesn't even understand what the hell she's fighting for half the time. She basically said, "Oh, okay, so if people want to see me act like a contestant in Jerry Springer, so I'll go in there and just start saying, 'You don't want a piece of me,' and start pounding the table. I take you." And it's like she's expecting the rest of the gallery just start chanting, "Jerry, Jerry, Jerry." Like, what the hell? What the hell is this? It's just a joke. It's an ultimate joke. But as long as idiots will keep voting for her, she'll keep giving them what they want. So, there you go. There you go. It's time for me to land my plane. So I am heading on over to Locals. I urge you to join me over there. If you can't afford the $5 a month thing, I get it, and I'll happily provide you with a code. You can DM me on X at the following pro, or if you send me an email at goodlogic@gmail.com, I'll try to check those emails too. And I'll tell you that when you sign up, I'm just going to hand out the password. When you sign up monthly, not annually. You're going to put in the password, and then the next month you just add a 2 onto it, and then a 3, and then a 4. Each month you have to re-sign, but you use the same password, and it'll work for like up to 6 months. Well, I guess those will all work through the end of the year. So anyhow, that's the story. That is the story. I thank you all for joining me. Tomorrow's Friday. I'm not going to be here. Saturday night, I'm unlikely to be here. Sunday night, doubtful, but we'll see. Doubtful, we'll see. I do expect to be on Layback Law tomorrow, but why am I telling you this now? You're all going to be joining me over on Locals in like a minute and a half. I'm just going to set up the stream and just jump right in there. That's goodlogic.locals.com. We're going to be talking about how much bunk is going to debunk all the bunk of the Free Palestine claims. A lot of debunking to do. And I got a bunch of videos to share with you, and we're going to have a good time, and we're going to probably even get some laughs out of it. Believe it or not, probably get some laughs. So that's coming up like right now. You should all be clicking the link and jumping on out of here, unless you're too busy eating lab meat, which means you're ignored my repeated warnings. That's not for you. It's for they, them. And even don't wash that down with a helping of the bugs. No matter what they tell you, do not eat the bugs. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm going to see you all over in Locals. I'm doing a quick check to make sure I didn't miss. I think I missed one thing. I missed a rant. I don't want to miss that. John, I'm asking, not because I asked you this the other night, because we need a Branco Joe cast again. I'll bring him in here soon. TX47 says, but if the Census Bureau admits that 2020 census was false, then why was that census accepted, and why are people in prison for fraud and malfeasance? People just don't go to prison anymore. There's no accountability. That's why. To answer your question. Sorry that I got to that so late. I'm going to head over to Locals. I'll see you all there. For those of you who don't manage to click that button, I still wish you a good night, and as always, Godspeed.